Ira Galupe-Borsk. IRA SIFF is a veteran of the show here, but hasn't been on for several years. We'll be talking about a number of things, among them the doings of his company, La Gran Scena di New York, of which he is the prima donna assoluta. Yes, the prima donna assoluta. We'll also be playing some Geraldine Farrar and a number of other singers. It should be, well, an exciting show. Welcome back, Ira, Madam Vera.
Thank you, Stefan.
Geraldine Farrar, you've read her book.
Yes, I have.
What's it called?
It is called Such Sweet Compulsion. And I kind of boned up a bit knowing that we were going to play some Farrar this evening, and I had bought the book at the Met Bazaar. Remember the Met? Do they still have the Met Bazaar? No, I went one year when 5 prima donnas turned up to autograph pictures, including the late lamented Zinka and Sayao and Rose Bampton. And that year they had a lot of things on sale, and one of the things I found was this Farrar book, and I kind of put it on the shelf and didn't really read it. And when you mentioned that we were going to be talking about reappraising Farrar, is that what we're up to?
Well, the question is, was Geraldine Farrar overrated? On the one hand, she had enough groupies, female groupies, to make you think she were Jose Carreras. On the other hand, my reaction listening to the 78s always was, well, she's not really all that expressive.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes, well, I can't help but agree with you, but I do have a feeling about Farrar, which is that there's a total picture to the Farrar story which can't really be gleaned entirely from the 78s. We can get hints of it from the 78s, but I feel like Farrar apparently was one of those performing artists more than a voice, and maybe akin to Mary Garden, if you want to hark back to that time. A little bit to Callas, although Callas certainly has a generation of admirers from records alone. I still found that Callas's impact when I saw her in the theater was tremendous compared with anything that was just sound alone. Seeing her in a role was tremendous. Farrar seems to be a stage personality.
Now, if any diva slept her way to the top, that might be said of Farrar.
Yes, well, of course, that's absent from the book.
Well, what was her story in
a
nutshell?
In a nutshell, and the book is most bizarre. May I tell you a little about the way the book is constructed? It is an autobiography of Geraldine, which is written allegedly. It's written by Geraldine, but it's written allegedly by Geraldine and the spirit of her dead mother. This allows her the conceit to say the most incredibly flattering things about herself, but when she says those things, she says them as her mother, thereby not seeming immodest. So we get Geraldine's story, and then we get the mother's story, and the chapters are headed the mother and the daughter. She was a Boston girl, not from a tremendously wealthy family, but I think she had a very clever and ambitious mother who wanted maybe to have a career herself, but never did. And this unfulfilled desire she nurtured through Geraldine, who was apparently a very attractive girl with a promising voice from an early age. In a nutshell, somehow they conned, whatever, a lady called Annie Webb into giving them $20,000, which was an enormous sum at that time, for the entire family to go to Paris and for Geraldine to study and thereby have a career. And the career is a kind you just can't have anymore. It's not the kind that is spawned in the conservatories of Bloomington, Indiana. It's not based on sight singing skills or stage deportment, but it was instant stardom. She did not study with Marchesi, although the opportunity presented itself, and I have a quote from the book that was interesting about why she didn't. She ended up studying somewhat with Lehmann, Lily Lehmann, in Berlin, and of course was admired by the Crown Prince in Berlin very greatly. Apparently, I'd read that she'd had an affair with him, but there's nothing about it in the book. In the book, it's all very respectable.
Well, she did have affairs with, among others, Toscanini.
Yes. In the book, she argues a lot about Tempe with him, but there's no sex.
Their relationship to begin with was stormy, but they ended up as lovers. And ultimately, it is believed that he left New York because of Oldamata from Farrar and from Toscanini's wife. Supposedly, Farrar wanted him for herself, and supposedly the wife wanted him for herself.
Well, during that whole period, Farrar did not wed. She did not wed until after Toscanini was out of the picture.
He fled. When was that?
I don't remember exactly when he fled, but she didn't marry until she was approaching 40.
Anyway, we left her in Germany just after the turn of the century.
She made a sensational debut in Germany, and she sang a number of roles in Germany, including lighter roles, Juliet, Marguerite and Faust, even Gilda. In fact, she sang Gilda at the Theater des Westens in Berlin, where we perform with Gran Scena, to Caruso's Rigoletto. She was very, very popular, and there were scandals immediately about the attentions of the royal family to her. And the voice was immediately appraised as somewhat uneven on top, but very, very dark and rich in the middle. She always felt that was her expressive glory, was her middle voice. She was apparently, they keep saying slender, although the pictures don't look that slender, but maybe for that period, slender and attractive on stage, and given to improvisatory acting of the kind that was not customary to divae of the period. This seemed to impress tremendously. She must have had a lot of nerve. A lot of nerve.
What brought her back to this country?
An offer from the Met brought her back to this country, and she had an opportunity for an earlier audition, sort of a Callas-like story at the Met, but didn't take what they had offered her because she didn't think it was grand enough. And they came to her again. By this time, she had sung a great deal in Berlin, was a mega star in Berlin, and in Monte Carlo she had sung as well, and was offered this contract at the Met, and came back and had a very, very successful debut at the Met.
That was in 19...
Oh, not dates.
Yeah.
Don't ask
Somewhere
me
around
dates.
4 or 5. Was the debut actually...
I think 1906.
As
I
Butterfly,
think.
was it?
No, she was the first butterfly in the United States. Destin was the first one in London with Caruso and Scotti, but she didn't want to do it at the Met for some reason. She wasn't performing at the Met at that time, so they offered it to Farrar, who had made a very successful debut the previous season.
I was under the impression that at least initially Puccini was not enthusiastic about her butterfly.
I can imagine that was the case. She even mentions it in the book that at least at first he wasn't. And in fact, there's an autographed photo of him for her that's a plate in the book. It's one of the pictures in the book, and I noticed that the phrasing is very careful, kind of to the very intelligent artist Geraldine Farrar. I think after Storchio, Italian divas, perhaps the sound and the approach to language and phrasing wasn't really to his ear, and certainly she had fights with Toscanini about these things at first.
I wonder whether anybody knows exactly what Puccini's position was.
Yeah, I was very disappointed that there wasn't good dish about that in the book. She kind of says that she was aware that he didn't like it at first, but that he was always extremely kind to her in person. But I know that he complained about it a lot in letters.
How did the career progress after that? Did she become wildly popular immediately?
Yeah, she was wildly popular immediately, and the Jerry Flappers began to, follow her around, the teenage girls of like, as you said, the Carreras fans. And she was, very much a fashion plate. Incredible clothes, incredible sums of money spent on clothes, and also made here the same reputation as a stage person that she had made in Berlin, of being flamboyant and wild on stage. When she took up Carmen, this kind of clinched it. Butterfly and Carmen became her two roles, and she sang many, many performances of both of those roles. She didn't sing a great number of performances, and she did retire at 40 in 1922, as she said she would. And both the voice was declining. I mean, there was a reason for this. She keeps referring to it as a fragile larynx in the book.
What made her voice decline? Can anyone say at this remove?
That's always a very mysterious thing. It's certainly not from reckless roles. You couldn't compare it, for instance, to a Callas or a Scotto kind of story of taking on very heavy roles. She shied away. She was offered the premiere of Salome by Strauss, and she shied away from it. And then kind of dishes Emmy Destin in the book and says that Destin, she saw a performance with Destin who looked like a misplaced Walkyrie, she says, knowing that she herself would have, of course, looked magnificent in it, but not been heard. She tried Leonora in Trovatore once and stopped doing it, although she loved Elizabeth in Tannhäuser, which we think of as a heavier role. But mostly she sang Marguerite, Bohème, Carmen, Butterfly, and Juliet, in Romeo and Juliet. I think she started very young, and I think for a voice, when the singer starts so very young, it's not that abnormal by 40 for the voice to be on the wane. We think of it as a kind of brief meteoric career, but if you begin singing a lot at 17, 23 years later, it's not that unusual.
I have the view that one of the reasons why some careers were relatively short was over-singing, the need to pack rehearsals close to the performances, perhaps even to rehearse on the day of the performance. We know that, for example, the first Norma was a fiasco because the singers were oversung. I'm not sure whether this was true of Farrar.
Well, not particularly true of Farrar, although of her colleagues. Farrar makes a point in the book of saying that she sang at half voice in rehearsals and was frowned upon by people, including Puccini and Toscanini, who were annoyed with her at the Butterfly rehearsals when Caruso and Scotti were apparently giving forth, but that this was the way she had learned in Germany to get through things.
Now, she became a media star. She appeared in silent films. I think she made her first appearances in films somewhere around 1915.
That's right.
Didn't she do a silent version?
Carmen.
Yes.
Yes, very successful apparently. Although after her first few films, Goldwyn canceled her contract because they stopped selling. So I think that was definitely a meteoric career.
Do you recall what other films she made?
Well, I don't think that they're titles that mean too much to us now. Her first few films, she played Spanish Spitfires, including the film of Carmen, and another film. The name is escaping me, although I certainly can find the chapter in the book. There are lots of mentions of the names, but they're not films we still know.
My company, Belcanto Society, collects and sells those films of that period to support its money-losing efforts, but I've never come across her films.
No, I've never seen one. There's one called Flame of the Desert, and in it she stars with Lou Tellegen, who was her husband briefly, a very stormy, very unhappy marriage. He was a stage actor who had an unsuccessful Hollywood career. She's in a film called Shadows, and a successful film called Joan the Woman, which was a Joan of Arc story.
How did it all end?
Well, I'll tell you that after she retires to Connecticut, she did a decade of concerts after the opera career. She would tour around doing a mini Carmen herself, which gave her a kind of quasi-operatic vent. She retired completely from the stage to Connecticut. She did things like fundraise for the Met, and at that point I think I put the book down.
Well, the question tonight was Geraldine Farrar overrated? Was she the product of what the Italians term a montatura, a publicity build-up, montatura, M-O-N-T-A-T-U-R-A. My guest is IRA SIFF, head founder and prima donna of La Gran Scena Opera di New York. We'll be sampling some of Gran Scena's recent performances. Ira, before we plunge in and hear Farrar first in some excerpts from Carmen, do tell us what lies in store for La Gran Scena.
Well, we are about to do our 10th anniversary New York season. This is our 10th season in New York, which is, of course, our home base. So this is a very special season to us. We're doing some new Scenas, which we have not previously performed. For those, I guess, who are still not familiar with us, we are, of course, a male travesti opera company. Men sing the men's roles and men sing the ladies' roles. We perform them in key, and the approach to the staging and the musical styles seems to be what's appealing to opera fanatics in what we do. After that, we're supposed to go to do a festival in Barcelona in November. Everything after that is up in the air except for the Brighton Festival in England. We've had a very successful time in England, Scotland, and Ireland in the past few seasons.
Did you get to perform for the Queen?
Well, a number of queens, but not Queen Elizabeth.
Now, some of you may be recoiling in horror. A bunch of men defiling opera by screeching soprano parts. A little later in the evening, we'll harken back to a few moments from the July 23rd broadcast with Franco Corelli. He's in ecstasy about La Gran Scena. He finds them wonderfully expressive. And I think you will too. We'll sample some excerpts later. The more you know about opera, the greater the number of levels on which you are able to enjoy La Gran Scena. To be sure, there's lampooning, there's spoofing, but it's done with affection and knowledge. Before plunging in with Farrar, an update on our contests. We've had an active period here in voting, both during the last show and above all since. And time permitting, I'll be reading some letters about the different singers receiving votes, and certainly I'll be taking your calls tonight. Out of 546 votes cast to date in the Carreras Domingo Pavarotti contest, Pavarotti has the lead with 308 votes. Carreras is in second place with 121, so he's recovered his slender lead over Domingo. Domingo was one vote away from Carreras at one point during the last show in the battle for second place. Domingo remains in third place with 117 votes. Now, in the contest for favorite tenor of the century, Corelli continues to pick up votes. Björling had been in first place, Corelli in second. Corelli was steadily gaining on Björling, but gradually. Then Corelli appeared on the program 5 times. Early on, he surged ahead of Björling. Now Corelli is in Italy, in the Dolomites. Spoke with him today, in fact, in connection with our series of programs, monthly programs beginning on December 8th, when he returns. And he's fine. The voice on the phone sounds very, very brilliant. I mentioned that. He said it's because of the mountain air, and he's singing. In any case, since he's been absent, he's continued to pick up votes. However, I will be bending over backwards to give Björling fans an opportunity to come out of the woodwork. We'll be programming a good deal of Björling. Corelli is 146 votes. He's in first place. Björling is in second place with 117 votes. Caruso continues to maintain his lead over Gigli for third place. Caruso has 52 votes to Gigli's 47. In fifth place is McCormick with 13 votes, no movement there. In sixth place, Vickers with 9 votes. In seventh place, Carreras with 7 votes. In eighth place, there has, alas, been movement. Melchior had slowly gained on Zucker and was tied with him for a long time, but now has overtaken him. Melchior is in 8th place with 6 votes, putting Zucker our favorite son candidate. In 9th place, he has 5 votes. 10th place is held by Bergonzi with 4. 11th place jointly by Delmonico, Klaus, Tauber, and Tucker with 3 votes each, putting Pavarotti in 15th place. Pavarotti was tied with a group of others for 15th place, but he's now picked up a vote, putting them into 16th. They include Di Stefano, Domingo Lanza, Lauri Volpi, Rosfenger, and Schikow. They each have 2 votes, putting the following into 22nd place: Bonci, De Lucia, De Muro, Fleta, Jeda, Kozlovsky, Leach, Lemishev, Mann, Merli, Henry Price, Torsten Ralph. You're smirking, Ira? The very idea?
How could you hear a smirk with your back to me, Stefan?
The studio's laid out. So
It's just Kozlovsky and Henry Price. I couldn't help it. I smirked.
You're no fan of Kozlovsky, I take it.
I love Kozlovsky.
Do you love Henry Price?
I don't remember Henry Price all that well, I must admit. I remember seeing A Daughter of the Regiment and a few other city opera performances. I don't think I personally would have put him in a class with Kozlovsky.
Okay. Some people believe that Henry Price is insipid. Would you go that far?
Yeah, I would. You're always provoking, aren't you?
I don't mean to be. I'm just being honest. I mean, this is the reaction. However, someone who's touched the same chair as yours, Iris Bass, voted for Henry Price's favorite tenor of the century.
Iris voted for Henry
Yes.
Price. Interesting.
A great fan of yours.
And a very sensible woman. Perhaps I should retract.
Torsten Ralph, Josef Schmidt, Slezak Schreier, Simono, Tamagno Talivini, Ulus, Wittwisch, and Wunderlich, they each have 1 vote and are in 22nd place. So, if you want to vote, kindly do so when there's music playing. We'll be hearing Farrar on a newly released Pearl CD, CD on the British label Pearl. We'll hear her in excerpts from Carmen, the Habanera, the Seguidilla, the Chanson Bohème, and then a brief segment with Martinelli, no less.
No trill either.
La Bada La Montagne, and the card scene. So, 6 selections from Carmen with Farrar. 212-854-5223. Ahead, there are many juicy and controversial things, and some major developments here at the station. I'll apprise you of that shortly. 212-854-5223. I'm Stefan Zucker. He's IRA SIFF. This is WKCR-FM New York, 89.9 on the dial.
Con une fête apprivoisée, et c'est bien avec la belle, qui lui convient de refuser. Rien n'y fait me la souffrir, la parvient, l'autre se tait. Et c'est l'autre que je préfère, il n'a rien dit, mais il me plaît. Tu n'as jamais connu de loin. Si tu ne m'aimes pas, je t'aime. Si je t'aime, prends garde de toi. Si tu ne m'aimes pas, si tu ne m'aimes pas, je t'aime. Mais si je t'aime, si je t'aime, prends garde de toi. L'oiseau que je croyais surprendre, parti de l'aile et s'envola. L'amour est loin, tu peux l'attendre, tu ne l'attends plus, il est là. Tout, toi qui te vite, il s'en va, puis il revient. Tu crois l'éviter, il s'évite, tu crois l'éviter, il te tient. L'amour est enfant de bohème, tu n'as jamais connu de loi. Si tu ne m'aimes pas, je t'aime. Si je t'aime, prends garde à toi. Si tu ne m'aimes pas, si tu ne m'aimes pas, je t'aime. Mais si je t'aime, si je t'aime, prends garde à toi. Mais ils ne sont pas à mon gré. Voici la fin de l'automne. Tu respectes de moi. Tu t'appelles
Ma foi non, et si c'était pour toi, qui voudras être encore?
Tu m'aimes donc?
Moi, je t'adore.
Aux officiers sont venus tout à l'heure, ils nous ont fait danser.
Enfant,
Oh, j'avoue, si tu n'es pas jaloux,
eh oui, je suis jaloux.
toujours, monsieur, toujours. Avez aussi rend votre honneur, si vous verrez, Seigneur, comment je sais vous-même accompagner ma danse. Mettez-vous là, dans ce lit.
Carmen, rien que ma mascarade.
Et pourquoi, s'il te plaît,
Il me semble là-bas. Oui, c'est ton fleurons qui sonne la retraite, ne le t'entendis pas.
j'avais beau faire une mélancolique de nos filles, peut-être si vivre la musique, si nous sommes du ciel. Ra-ta-la-la-la, 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 ra-ta-la-la-la.
Il n'a pas compris, Carmen, toute la retraite. Il faut que moi, je rentre au quartier pour la fête.
Non, tu ne m'aimes et prendre retraite qui sonne pour dire à l'amour qu'il est temps de partir. Le ciel vert, la vie est rose pour faillir l'univers et pour moi souveraineté.
just heard Geraldine Farrar in excerpts from Carmen on a Pearl CD. She was partnered in
more tonal color, more expressivity, particularly in the Carmen excerpts. I think as the CD goes on, it's less so in Bohème and then a little bit more again in Butterfly. And Carmen and Butterfly were her signature roles. I find the choice of tempi in Carmen eccentric, sometimes slow. I wonder if they were choices or if they were to fill the time on a 78 and make an excerpt of something like La Ba La Ba, or she was really painting a wonderful picture of life in the mountains for José. It's hard to tell. But there's a darkness that's talked about in the reviews of her work and in the descriptions herself of what she feels is the strength in her middle voice, a darkness and a nuance, tonal color. And I find more of it in evidence than I remembered having heard before only Butterfly excerpts. Awesome.
We have here a number of listener comments, although they're not about Farrar's singing for the most part. By the way, I'm Stefan Zucker. He is IRA SIFF of La Gran Scena de New York. Call here from Joe Pierce. Farrar was the first Met Butterfly. Renée Vivienne may have been the first American Butterfly. Vivienne recorded some of Butterfly for Columbia with America's first Pinkerton, Vernon Stiles, Stiles, Vivienne being spelled Vivienne.
Yes, I may have said American. Actually, I meant Met because even in New York, Farrar wasn't the first. Florence Easton sang it in English, I believe, before Farrar sang it in Italian at the Met. Florence Easton sang it downtown in English, I think, at the Academy of Music.
Farrar, Joe Pierce continued, sang 669 performances in 15 years at the Met, including on tour. Maybe she did oversing. She made 14 films between 1915 and 1921, half of them directed by Cecil B. DeMille. Incidentally, there's been a cataclysmic upheaval here at WKCR amid charges of mismanagement and calls for impeachment. The 5-member board of directors resigned one by one. A new board will be elected next month. In events that are apparently unrelated, the hosts of A Night at the Opera, the show alternating with this, have also resigned. As a result of this, Ines Escandron will be hosting that slot, and I'll tell you a bit about her in just a little bit. But in the meantime, there's been some schedule juggling. Ines Escandron, will be on air in this time slot next Saturday, the 22nd. I'll be back on the 29th with Cheryl Studer as my guest. Joe Pierce will cover Studer with Neglected Tenors. Then on October 6th, I'll be back to play some Björling. That would not ordinarily be an air date for me, but because of the changes here, I'll be on the show then. On October 13th, we'll have Titans of the French Opera Between the Wars with Phil Stern, Russ Hornbeck, and Seth Winner. Then October 22nd will be hosted by Ines Escandron. On November 3rd and 10th, my guest will be Henry Pleasance. On November 24th, Joost van Bergen with a program called Booing at Bayreuth. Is it justified? And he'll be playing examples of that as well as examples of Bergonzi and Callis getting booed. On December 8th, Franco Corelli will return for the first in a new series of programs with him as guest. That one will be devoted to Beniamino Gigli. The show here is heard ordinarily on alternate Saturdays, but there are a couple of extra Saturdays thrown in from 10:30 in the evening until 2 in the morning. I'll be repeating this information presently. A call from Mary Newton of New York City. All of Farrar's surviving films were shown last year at the Theater of the Moving Image in Astoria as part of a DeMille retrospective. Continuing, Mary Newton said, "I don't know who this tame woman singing now is, but the woman in the films is the sort of personality that exists one or two times a century. In Carmen, in that film, to get away from José, she claws her way up the bull ring. He pulls her down and kills her. No Carmen did anything like it. Unbelievable," so declared Mary Newton. Nina Mazzeo phoned. The show is interesting tonight. Leonard Tillman would like to know which member of La Gran Scena di New York is tattooed, and Mr. Tillman would like to know of other opera singers with tattoos, other divas other than Rosalind Elias and Emmy Destin.
Well, the only Gran Scena diva that I know of with a tattoo is me.
Now, it's generally accepted, and this was published in Stereo Review around 1972, that Ros Elias had her belly tattooed with her Social Security number for publicity. The rationale she gave was that she kept forgetting her Social Security number, so she had it tattooed on her. The press dismissed this as simply a silly publicity stunt, but it did get her some publicity nonetheless. First of all, IRA SIFF, Madame Vera Kalupe Borsk, where are you tattooed?
Well, in a much less unusual place, and it's not my Social Security number. I'm tattooed on my left arm, and it's a bird, actually.
Is there any particular significance to it?
I think, there was no particular significance to the entire decade of the 60s. So my tattoo has about as much significance as anything did then. It was a kind of an act of hippiedom, I think, at the time. You have to remember that before I was a diva, I was a sort of downtown tenor star in the operas of Al Carmine's in the off-Broadway circuit. To which I'm actually returning in December, my first tenor engagement in 8 years, to do a revival of one of his oratorios. And at that time, I received my tattoo from an eccentric artist from Positano. Those were the times.
Where will the appearance be in December?
At the Judson Church, at the Judson Poets Theater. It's their centennial year, and as part of it, they're having a 20th anniversary revival of his oratorio Christmas Wrappings.
May I see the tattoo? I'd love to... it's not that I'd love to describe it, of course, but I feel I ought to describe it to the listeners.
Well, I'll try to get the sleeve up. It's what my mother in Palm Beach would call quiet elegance. It's a very, very subtle tattoo.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a first.
Fashioned after
it's on Ira's upper left arm, and I guess it does look like, sort of a duck.
Perhaps dove, another D-bird. It was fashioned after an American Indian design. At the time, I was very involved in American Indian art and Art Deco, which have similarities.
It's got a long bill, I think, yes?
As do I.
And a long, slender body tapering toward the bottom.
As I used to.
IRA SIFF and his bird. Now, Dennis Curran of the Bronx phoned to vote for Björling in the Tenor of the Century, the favorite Tenor of the Century contest, and to declare it's unfair that Corelli is on the show. And more, why repeat contests? 8 years ago, Stefan, you had these two contests, Carreras versus Domingo versus Pavarotti, and favorite Tenor of the Century. And why weigh the contest against Björling by having Corelli on the show? Well, the reason for repeating the contest is because perceptions change. At that time, Domingo won the contest between Carreras, Domingo, and Pavarotti. He received 151 votes. Carreras narrowly edged out Lucianissimo for second place. Carreras had 143 votes to Pavarotti's 141. Now, of course, Pavarotti is far in the lead with 308 votes to Carreras's 121 and Domingo's 117. At that time, 1982, Björling won the contest handily, with the contest for favorite tenor of the century, with Gigli in second place, and Caruso and Corelli tied for third, trailing far behind. Now the results are very different with regard to the complaint about the contest being weighted in favor of Franco Corelli. Again, I've been bending over backwards to bring you Björling, and will continue to do that. Again, Corelli was gaining on Björling and might well have overtaken him anyway, and has been picking up votes since his last appearance on the program, and so is Björling. But Corelli has had enormous momentum. He was, right from the start, this time around, far ahead of Gigli and Caruso. And again, this time round, Caruso is somewhat ahead of Gigli with 51 to 47, Gigli's 47 votes. George Stephenson of Woodside called to vote for Giovanni Consiglio in the contest for favorite tenor of the century, adding, "I fell in love with his voice when he appeared on your show about 7 or 8 years ago, Stefan. I like Farrar. Neither Poncel nor Caruso could stand her, however." Well, with regard to Giovanni Consiglio, thanks to Charlie Handelman, I have a tape of Consiglio replacing Corelli as Cavaradossi in a Tosca starring Milanov, and we'll be playing that as well as Consiglio in some arias and doing various things, a nun, in connection with Giovanni Consiglio, a gorgeous voice. With regard to, you agree, Iris?
Yes, very much so.
Regarding Poncel and Caruso on the subject of Farrar,
Again, from the book, of course, there's no indication of hatred, so it's hard to tell. The book is extremely slanted, very entertaining. She was extremely fond of Caruso, according to the book. They were close, and he was very playful and mischievous, as we all know. And both she and the spirit of her mother admire Caruso tremendously, and she was thunderstruck by the news of his death in the book. Poncel she mentions favorably as a Carmen. In fact, she says that at the time the book was written, which is 1938, Poncel had been doing Carmen for a short time, and I think that Farrar's impression of Carmen from Poncel was reminiscent of her own Carmen in that it was controversial because it was pretty wild, and Poncel's Carmen, we all know, was not universally well received, and Farrar, like other people, see that as a possible reason for her early retirement. Poncel's early retirement. Farrar sees the bad reception of Carmen, but she admires it and thinks that it simply needs more time and tempering with time and more experience to hone down, as she says, and this is sort of something about performing, which I believe you can always tone down. I mean, God forbid a bland performer, but a wild performer can always be refined, tamed, toned down. I think there's more to work with there. And I think that we opera snobs are very suspicious of superstar performers, God forbid another case of Curie disease. I don't think that Farrar was one of those bland superstar performers. I think that she was spirited and eccentric and exciting on stage. So I don't think it's a question of her being milquetoast or having no talent. But I don't think that the recording medium was one that was going to show her talent as well as it did perhaps other singers of that time who were more vocal artists.
George Meyer of Bayside phoned to say that Farrar made, among others, the following films: Maria Rossa, Joan the Woman God Forgot, That was with Wallace Reed. He died, he OD'd on drugs. That's how he died. Lou Tellegen, Farrar's husband for a time, committed suicide, according to Mr. Meyer, on account of their marriage. They were living in a place called the Garden of Allah. According to Mr. Meyer, Farrar's Carmen was the precursor of DeMille's Hollywood extravaganzas. Hollywood gave Farrar a trip in a private railroad car to get her to Hollywood, and in general gave her star treatment.
She always had a private railroad car. This was something that she required on all her concert tours, and she was the first person in Hollywood to have a railroad car as a kind of precursor to the trailer, which became the place that the star went to calm down and eat, drink, and find comfort in between the shooting of scenes. Farrar was the first to have this, although she points out that because it was the first, it didn't have all the amenities that later people's trailers had. She also was the first and only one that I know of, but I'm sure this may not be the case, but to have her own private dressing room at the Met, which, of course, she describes as a dusty little hole that was really not going for any use anyway, so she may as well have moved into it. She did have her own private dressing room during her reign at the Met. No one else did.
So even on nights when she wasn't performing, other singers could not use that room.
That's right. Also, I found it interesting that the great controversy, as we found out after Bing's book, or according to Bing's book, was that Callas, her real run-in with Bing came because she didn't want to do the tours. And Farrar had it written into her contract when Gotti took over the Met that she didn't have to do the tours or didn't have to do them past a certain point because she had obligations in Berlin to that house in which she was always popular. So she simply negotiated that for herself with no controversy, no problem. Well, at first it was resisted, but then they gave into it, whereas it caused Callas later the same gimmick of not wanting to have to tour the country, and she didn't have a private railroad car, caused her to be fired by Bing.
What were some of the appointments in Farrar's railroad car?
I don't know, because, you see, she describes it as being so humble and basic that it sounds like there really weren't any appointments. She had a maid, and she had, these things are mentioned in passing, and fabulous wardrobe, but mostly she complains about the thing that all movie stars complain about, all the actors I know complain about, and that's that you sit on the set for hours and hours and hours and hours and don't do anything, and some entire days you don't do anything. So she had to have a comfortable place to while away the not doing anything.
I'm Stefan Zucker. He's IRA SIFF, also known as Vera Lupe Borsk, head of La Gran Scena de New York. And this is La Gran Scena. We'll be returning to Farrar shortly. Franco Corelli appeared on this show July 23rd, and among other things, this is what he said. Of their recent performances you have enjoyed.
Scusa?
Non c'è lì, ma io chiedo, ci sono delle rappresentazioni a te piacevoli
Dove?
recentemente?
Io?
Sì.
The truth, non sono stato molto attirato da questo, non ho sentito niente ultimamente.
Attirato vuol dire
Attirato che mi ha interessato.
Yes, I was not very attracted to attend much, not really going much. What of la Gran Scena di New York and its prima donna assoluta Vera Galupe Bosch? Tu sei stato andato con il dottore Umberto Boeri alla Gran Scena di New York, dove canta.
Gli uomini cantano da donna.
Sì.
I was, yes.
What did you think?
Really beautiful. I heard some singer that I believe in my life, you know. They are a man that they sing look like a woman. That's I swear was beautiful also because he was lui era truccato da donna.
He was made up as a woman.
He was a woman, but also the voice was so important that make me crazy, really.
Really, who is that? Which singer?
I don't remember. I was there about 1 year ago.
Well,
really wonderful.
The world may be prejudiced against men singing women's parts, but I think that Vera Galupe Bosch is today's most expressive Azucena.
This was the mezzo.
Yes.
That make me crazy. Was wonderful.
You're thinking of
Aida. She sang with the tenor, make the duo over the Aida. The Ameneris she sang opera Aida and she was Ameneris, of course. Make a duo between Ameneris and Radames. It was a really wonderful voice, so beautiful note that I cannot believe it.
You may be thinking of Phillene Wannell, Phil Koch in real life. Yes.
It was great. It was wonderful. It was so interesting. So making me really beautiful night for remember.
Sometimes I think that Gran Scena substitutes camp for expressivity, but when they don't, when camp is simply an overlay, I think the results can be wonderfully expressive and exciting. Eileen Crescitelli of Valley Stream, New York, I think it's in Traviata that they really give in to excess in a way that defeats the emotions of the music, but in some other things they can be most compelling. Eileen Crescitelli of Valley Stream, New York, please include my vote for Franco Corelli for Tenor of the Century. This is the most glorious voice. Listening to him sing is like a religious experience. He is a thrilling, exciting, and soul-touching tenor. The mere thought that he might perform again is really exciting. My most prized possession is a videotape of him in concert in Japan in 1971, a tape sold by Bel Canto Society. God bless the Japanese for recording him on video. We'll now go into a tape of Phillene Wannell singing Crude sorte.
Ne
IRA SIFF, what is it we just heard?
Well, we just heard a performance of Phillene Wannell, a.k.a. Philip Koch, from my company, La Gran Scena Opera Company, of Crude Sorte from l'Italiana in Algeri, which was recorded by, actually that's off a television soundtrack, Ulster Television, at the Belfast Festival last November.
And earlier we heard The Ride of the Walkyries.
Yes, that was recorded in Berlin at the Theater des Westens in Berlin with the company of divas in Gran Scena. Some of the men sing women's roles, some of the men sing men's roles, and some of the men sing men's and women's roles. We always begin the show with The Ride of the Walkyries, just to kind of establish the look and the sound of the company.
Now, for Franco Corelli, who is commenting about the company and about Phillene Wannell in particular, part of the anomaly of attending Gran Scena is that one responds to, or he responded to Phillene as a woman, knowing that underneath she's really a man. Phillene Wannell is quite a voluptuary.
Yes, well, Phillene is the glamour puss in the company. I don't think really that the basis of Gran Scena and what it's all about is passing for a woman either in look or sound. We have something that's an aspect of the show, and Phillene fills it magnificently.
She's a tall drink of water.
Yes, quite a tall drink of water. Kind of looks to me like, and a lot of people like the young Bess Meyerson. And in fact, in Phillene's bio, it says that she was indeed Miss Texas and a contestant in the Miss America pageant, but she lost the title to a young woman whose talent was packing a suitcase.
Now, what's the story here? What is Gran Scena?
Okay, well, for the uninitiated, Gran Scena is a company which hopes to pay tribute to forgotten styles of opera performing. I think that a number of the company is steeped in the old Met of the 50s and 60s, and the invented divas of the company and tenors, baritones, and basses are prototypes of characters that we grew up on when we were going to the opera, when we were young opera goers, standing room line fanatics. And we hope to recreate, as I think Charles Ludlam in the Ridiculous Theatre did with drama, we hope to create a lost era of opera where performing was more flamboyant, where singing was more exaggerated, more committed, and stage deportment likewise was more exaggerated and committed. On the way to doing that, the gimmick that the divas are men, that the voices are stretched to amazing heights and so forth, adds a certain flair and also a great deal of comedy. But the comedy, we hope, is not really at the expense of the music.
Now, Ludlam and Everett Quinton, appearing here on the show, performed extended excerpts from Gallus. Some of you may remember that Ludlam appeared as Gallus, according to Bob Jacobson, capturing the essence of Callus. Everett Quinton appeared as a character called Bruna Lina Raza, modeled after Callus's maid Bruna, and at the same time after the diva Lina Bruna Raza. Now, the extraordinary thing is that when Ira appeared here last, it was as Vera Galupe-Borsk. Ludlam was quite happy to perform excerpts from Gallus, but he didn't want to be interviewed as Gallus, thinking it too risky, thinking he couldn't improvise in character to that extent, something Ira did successfully, too successfully for some listeners. They believed that I was interviewing an eccentric Russian diva, when finally mid-show we let the cat out of the bag that Vera was really Ira. Some were dismayed and irate. I don't think Bob Rideout, the listener, has ever forgiven me. At the time he said, I pledged money to WKCR, and now you trick me with this. What about such reactions?
I fortunately, I think that they're growing less and less as we become more well-known. You know, this is our 10th season in New York, and most of the people who hold the company in some sort of disdain are people who haven't seen the company. We count among our fans, and I recount some of this list really for the sake of credibility, not simply to boast. James Levine, Joan Sutherland and Richard Bonning, Leontine Price, Franco Corelli, Rosalind Elias, Samuel Ramey, Hakan Hagegard, June Anderson, Susan Dunn, Stefan Zucker, Jeffrey Tate, Marissa Galvani, and the lamented Bianca Barini, who was our first and most rabid fan among the Met contingent of singers, and many, many more.
I brought Bianca to Gran Scena.
Yes, you did.
82, and she kept coming back.
Kept coming back. She came a dozen times before she left New York, and was a wonderfully supportive fan. I thought she was a wonderfully expressive singer myself.
I saw Levine there in ecstasy at one of your town hall appearances. He was doubled over part of the time and transfigured, hanging on every note.
Lucia apparently is his favorite excerpt, which the mad scene I performed at that performance, and if we have time we'll hear an excerpt tonight. And he there's the story told that when they were doing the new production of Aida a couple of seasons ago, that when it came to a certain tremolo in the orchestra in the Aida Amneris duet, on which I dust in rhythm because I play Aida as a maid, Levine fell over on the podium during the rehearsal and had to stop for a moment to compose himself.
Now, Gran Scena has evolved artistically in many different ways. The company has become quite polished, and if you've not been to see them for a few years, you might want to check them out again. What is it that you'll be doing at Symphony Space in October?
Well, our 10th anniversary season at Symphony Space here on Broadway and 95th Street includes it's kind of a potpourri of some of the Gran Scena classics and some new material. Of course, we open with The Ride of the Walkyrie, and then we do the Santuzza Alfio scene from Cavalleria with a fiery soprano, Daniela della Scarpone, who will be partnered by the American baritone Cheryl Merrill. Then Vera Galupe-Borsk, the Slavic diva that I portray, will sing L'altra notte. A frequent visitor to the company, Gabriella Tonazziti Casaruola, who is the 105-year-old diva, the world's oldest living diva, will sing Caro Nome. Phillene will do the love scene from Samson and Delilah with the Helden tenor Siegfried Stern von Bethlehem. And then we do, for the second act, we do our second act of Tosca with Vera and the famous Hungarian baritone Fodor Sedan. This is our most celebrated scene, I suppose. And then there are some encores. Phillene and I are doing the Gioconda duet as a tribute to Zinka.
Now, I've gone to Gran Scena and mostly loved them. I detested the Traviata, feeling that the company sold out to camp, and feeling that IRA was at his best portraying tempestuous types rather than frail ones, that he's better suited to, well, to demented ones on the order of Azucena rather than demented ones on the order of, not that he's done it, Amina in Sonnambula. Mostly I've loved them, and above all, I wouldn't miss them. Whether they're hitting so far as you're concerned, or they're missing, there's real life there. Skeptical, overcome your skepticism sufficiently to check them out, because at their best, more at IRA SIFF's best, he's the most expressive soprano before the public. Why? How? His temperament, excitement, rubato. He steals time, he pays it back in his treatment of rhythms. There's real emotion, real passion. He's steeped in the idiom beyond what you get today at the Met by and large. Most of those people, I think, sing because at some point somebody said, "Oh, you've got a good voice there. You could sing opera." So they sing because they're told they can do it, and it becomes in many cases a question of self-aggrandizement. The thing that sets Gran Scena apart is that these people are in opera not for that, but because of real love of it, because it's in their blood, they've grown up with it, as has Ira. Some of this will emerge during the conversation. You'll see how much he knows. But I'm capsulizing now because we want to pack in a lot of music. You'll be missing out if you don't go. I've seen the Tosca Act 2 about 5 years back at Town Hall, and it was wonderful. Now, the more you know, the more you get out of what they do. For example, just before Vittoria, the tenor in that Town Hall Tosca, what did he do? He mimicked Renato Cioni in the 1964 video with Callas. Would you describe it, Ira?
Well, it's always one of the hallmarks of the company's long-held high notes at any opportunity, and a great display of dragging yourself at that particular moment, dragging yourself as Cioni did. That was interesting. You spotted that off the couch, then onto the floor, then dragging himself across the floor, so that he ended up center stage front, right in front of the prompter's box for the Vittoria, but first dusted the floor off before he fell upon it, seemingly spontaneously, so that he could sing his tremendous long-held Vittoria, and then stopped afterwards, bowed for applause.
Well, Cioni manages to sing Vittoria, and then get down on his knees.
Yes, well, we have him flop down afterwards as well. He actually sings Vittoria. He gets up for Vittoria. You couldn't possibly sing that kneeling. You need the support. Then flops back down on the floor after having dusted it.
Anyway, if you're in the know, Gran Scena is particularly juicy. You'll see replays of any number of choice moments from opera videotapes, from the Met. If you're not in the know, there'll be enough there to keep you involved. Check it out. How do you get tickets?
Well, you can get tickets by calling the box office at Symphony Space. The number there is a 212 number. And it's 864-5400, and the tickets can be purchased at that box office at 95th and Broadway, or charged over the phone at that box office number. You don't have to call one of those sort of Ticketmaster places. You can just call the Symphony Space box office.
What are the dates again?
The dates are October 11th through 21st. Thursdays through Saturdays the show is at 8, and for the early birds, the Sunday shows are at 7 p.m.
So we'll mention all of that information in just a bit, but let's head back to Geraldine Farrar, but not before I fill you in a little bit further on the situation here at WKCR. The new host at A Night at the Opera, the show alternating with this, heard next on Saturday, September 22nd from 10:30 until 2, will be Ines Escandron, I-N-E-S with an accent acute on the E, Escandron, E-S-C-A-N-D-R-O-N. And tentatively, next week, she'll be playing some Zarzuela excerpts. She speaks Spanish, she speaks Italian, she has some background in French, so she's not going to mangle those languages. She's considering shows involving, 78s not transferred to LPs, real rarities, interesting archival material. There are a number of programming choices being kicked around. She and I have been on the phone all day working that through. So check her out. It'll be a new beginning for that show, September 22nd, and then it'll be heard next on October 20th, and then we'll alternate with this. I'll be doing November 3rd with Henry Pleasance. Again, I'll be back on Stefan Zucker on September 29th. The scheduled guest is Cheryl Studer with Joe Pierce covering with neglected tenors. WKCR-FM New York, 89.9 on the dial. We'll turn to Farrar now in excerpts from Bohème. Si mi chiamano Mimi, o Soave Fanciulla, in which she's joined